This is Special Agent James A. Anderson on August 26th at approximately 10:15. I'm preparing to record a telephone conversation.
Shack USA.
Hi, is Kevin there?
I was out early, around 7:30 a.m., and I returned to the home around 9:30. And as you're driving down Home Street, where our house was, it's a one-way street, and I noticed, why is the street so packed with cars? There's cars everywhere. And then all of a sudden, crossing the street in front of me was somebody in an FBI windbreaker. I immediately looked over to my house, saw federal agents walking in and out. I looked straight forward and just kept on driving, making no eye contact with anybody.
When they left, this guy like took me aside and got my face and was like, "Where's Kevin?" I said, "I don't know where Kevin is." And he goes, "Well, you tell him a message that we're after him," or something, something ridiculous like that. I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll get right on that." I just kind of laughed at him, and he got really upset. He was like, "You think this is funny?" and blah blah blah. And you tell Kevin we're gonna get him. I go, "Okay."
We're 6 activists who are indicted under federal terrorism laws. We didn't break anything, we didn't burn anything, we didn't beat anyone, we didn't even so much as trespass. Our crime is doing exactly what I'm doing right now, speaking.
The target of Shack was the animal testing company Huntington Life Sciences and companies that did business with it.
Huntington Life Sciences was selected because it's a key player in the animal testing industry. They have a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of resources, and a lot of influence.
This hearing is the second hearing we've had on this subject. Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty, a radical animal rights organization that relies on a campaign of fear to convey their message of animal liberation.
What we have is an international conspiracy. These are not random, isolated acts.
Legitimate business enterprises are suffering.
The FBI, Homeland Security, and the federal government rallied behind this company to defend them as this victim of a protest campaign, and a victim that if they allowed to close and to shut down, that other corporations would be targeted next.
Corporations get to do what they want. That's a rule in our society, effectively. We challenged the right of this corporation to exist.
This is Willie's favorite treat, isn't it, honey? Don't you agree? This is Willie, and Willie is the big Justin Timberlake fan in the house. I get picked on for this. This is my pillowcase. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm masculine enough. Everybody always made fun of me about it, like, oh, you like pop music. And so I've got like Justin Timberlake bobblehead, and somebody gave me an autographed picture. Somebody actually made me a pillowcase with him on it, so. Growing up, I was one of those people whose conscience wouldn't let them remain silent. I had to do something. I was thinking about what career am I going to pursue because I want to work at an NGO or a nonprofit. Some people are passionate about the law or medicine. I was passionate about public policy and engaging the public on social issues. The animal rights issue always spoke to me because there was such a lack of voices speaking out on behalf of animals. I'd grown up with the beagle. Barney the beagle was my best friend as a little kid. In most labs, they use beagles for experimentation, and it really hit home to me. I got involved with the student organization for animal rights.
We would do a little bit of vegan outreach, we would do a little bit of anti-vivisection, a little bit of anti-fur. It became really focused under Kevin.
Those meetings would ramble on for hours. And at that point in time, I knew like this feel-good anarchist brand of activism wasn't a fit for me. I believe in hierarchy and leadership. I believe in authority.
He actually took over the U of M SOAR group. I'd never seen anything like what Kevin was able to do and get other people to rally behind.
We decided to figure out what major researchers at the university were receiving funding to do animal research. Our primary target was Marilyn Carroll, who takes Rhesus macaque monkeys and addicts them to crack cocaine and studies the withdrawal effects. We made flyers with her picture on it, distributed it to her students, to her colleagues. It was at this point in time that I realized you're doing a protest against a person who's doing something wrong. And so we had to make it personal. And going to her doorstep made it very personal. She went through the roof, as did her husband. No broken windows, no paint, just people at her home. It touched a nerve. The press never mentioned Marilyn Carroll before we started going to her house. But then they were also talking about, because they had to explain why we were there, what Marilyn Carroll was doing to these primates. The raid that happened at the University of Minnesota was at a neurological research center and then was in a psychology building.
The vandals, dressed in dark clothing and faces covered, kicked in doors, tore through labs, and took more than 100 research animals.
The impact of an act of terrorism is that it's shocking, that it shocks people. It terrorizes. The break-in had that impact.
I was out of town when it happened. When I got back into Minnesota, I couldn't believe something of this magnitude had happened at my school. It felt like we'd received a visit from somebody really important. I see individuals who are putting their lives and their freedom at risk to save these animals. Since I was a student there, I could be the campus spokesperson and try to explain to the media why radical underground activists would think it's appropriate to take animals out and to cause damage.
This is just a terrorist act. Come forward, admit to who did it, go to trial, and see what the outcome of the trial is.
I myself and nobody from the press office knows who did this or where you could contact them. Maybe it was hubris and being young and full of oneself, but I felt like repercussions weren't going to be an issue for me. I got a page, this is back in the day of pagers, saying, call me 911, call me 911. The FBI has just spent the last 3.5 hours at our home. They had guns and flak jackets. They tore our place apart. You need to come home, you need to come home.
The nexus would have been domestic terrorism.
The FBI was trying to find out if there was a relationship between the people who are publicly speaking, in theory, about tactics being used by underground animal rights activists, if there's a connection to the people who are actually carrying out the crimes.
Minnesota state legislators were trying to introduce legislation to make what I did illegal, speaking out on the behalf of a quote-unquote terrorist action, and even tried to make it retroactive. This wasn't about solving a crime. This was about sending a message that you better shut up.
Saturday afternoon near King's Cross Station in London, and protesters prepare for another rally against vivisection. Most are regulars, but one organizer is a visitor.
We have sheets right here on what to do if you're arrested. Please take one. Just details what to do in the police cells, what to do for interviews. England is the mecca for animal rights activism, and I always wanted to go there because of that. I had the intention of moving there and being involved in some campaigns on the weekends.
Kevin Kiwanis was the ALF spokesman in Minnesota and has been questioned as part of the ongoing FBI investigation into this raid.
After about a month of being there, I just wanted to campaign full-time because the success, the energy, the momentum was intoxicating. There's such a diversity of people, and they all have the same common desire, and that's to shut these places down. And that we'll come over all obstacles to shut them down. In America, the movement's much smaller, and we can't do this in such a mass scale.
Their destination, Huntington Life Sciences.
Huntington Life Sciences is one of the world's leading contract research organizations. We take a holistic approach to biopharmaceutical drug development to ensure the customer gets the best help and support in developing their products. We take the care of our animals very seriously, and our high ethical standards are core to our corporate philosophy. Contact us now to find out how we can help get your next product to market.
Huntington Life Sciences, or HLS, is a contract animal testing company. They don't engage in animal testing like most people would think of the term as finding a cure for AIDS or cancer. HLS will take money from any private corporation to carry out product testing, toothpaste or pharmaceuticals, an adhesive or a bleach or laundry detergent or you name it.
I loved it. It was a good company. It was looking after us. It was providing valuable service for the research in drug development. Huntington was doing everything right. Everything.
Hold on, less about dog. For a shake. Oh, shut up. I haven't got the patience today, I really haven't.
Now settle down.
Fucking hell! I'm really getting fucking mad with you! Every fucking time point! You better shut up. Fucking sit still.
Nobody condones that. That person was fired immediately. His supervisor was fired. One technician out of 600 slapped a dog, so.
If you're running late, you move faster, you're rougher with the animals. If the animals are struggling, the lab workers would smack them around the way you smack a computer. That's being sluggish or slow. I was in the US lab when the UK case broke, and the message that came to the workers in the US lab was, don't get caught doing anything like that.
You can do that with just hanging them in the air. That's pretty good.
Well, I remember driving home one night and shaking my head and saying to myself, it's all true. The animals are treated awfully. There's no regard for them. Their suffering doesn't matter at all. It's just about the dollar bill. It's all true.
Huntington was enemy number one for the animal rights world. SHAC stands for Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty.
It had its sole purpose of shutting down Huntington Life Sciences.
SHAC's approach was radically different than prior campaigns because tertiary targets were being chosen. Companies that Huntington needs to survive, but are companies that don't need Huntington.
The reason that was a success was because they were following the money.
They started targeting their financiers, their shareholders, their banks.
We're here today because Barclays, excuse me, are responsible for animals being tortured inside Huntington Life Sciences.
It was having an immediate effect. The share price nosedived. Huntington became a pariah.
I mean, Huntington Life Sciences is almost impossible to deal in. As high risk goes, you're at the leading edge of high risk.
Pretty quickly, it was impossible for us to get a bank account in this country or insurance coverage in this country. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of shareholders as well.
They took one hit after another. They found their investors backing out, including the most important, the Royal Bank of Scotland.
The year-long protest against the laboratory almost succeeded in closing it down. But at the last minute, an anonymous overseas backer came up with a rescue package.
The only way that they were saved was from a $33 million bailout from a U.S. company.
This is coming to the U.S., and everybody's participation is being sought after.
Warn our viewers that we are going to show you what is unfolding. There's the harpoon, there's the whale.
And there goes the first gunshot from the that 50 caliber rifle.
And I look over and you're driving, and I'm seeing them past you and they're all up on the bow of the ship holding shotguns. And you just have that moment of like, how the fuck did we get here? Like I'm on the ocean sabotaging a whale hunt.
But they have a target. The whale's back up.
Sure enough, the guy on the front of the boat goes up with his elephant gun to shoot this whale in the back. I just see Josh take out a flare, lit flare, and throw it over the bow of the boat. I'm like, well, fuck it. Consequences be damned. Let's get the job done.
The sole reason that I chose Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty versus the myriad other groups out there was the footage. One of the most horrifying things for me was that it featured what was supposed to be a necropsy on a primate. The primate was still alive and was still clearly breathing, and under no anesthetics. And this man was just callously cutting open his chest. And you could see his heart still beating. And I hated those fuckers.
Josh Harper, he's got one of the biggest hearts of anybody I know.
I remember being 14 years old and getting involved in punk rock music.
We ain't preaching, but this is our opinion. Everybody's got a right to free speech. Nazi redneck assholes, fuck off.
Reading the liner notes of all of these albums, hearing these lyrics about what was going on in the world, it helped to politicize me. As I started to dig more into the history of how change occurs, I realized that at every turn, every ounce of progress that we've had towards a more just world has come because there were people who were willing to fight and willing to sacrifice and really willing to suffer. Not all of them ended up succeeding in their struggles, but there's something beautiful about a person who has a degree of selflessness that takes them from their comfort and propels them out into the world against great odds and often ends in tragedy.
Your turn. Your turn. Your turn.
At times, these issues get to be a real abstraction. 500 a day, 70,000 a year, but we forget that their lives are very real, very tangible to them. And so I wanted to be here. I wanted to be near the lab. I wanted to see where it was all happening.
A few hundred feet is all that separates you and those animals right now. You can get angry, but my God, don't get second even.
I wanted to send them a message that they're not safe from me anywhere.
All the police in the world can't protect their finances. We got West LB Pamure. We got Barclays. Stevens is next. HLS
HLS owed millions of dollars, and Stevens bought that debt, and we wanted them to recall it.
We promised if Stevens divested, Huntington would be no more. They were the crutch Huntington was leaning on to survive.
If we want to sit down and have a scientific, factual debate, that's fine. Let's do it. But they won't do that.
Well, I just simply called. I asked to speak to Warren Stevens, the president and CEO. He wouldn't take my call.
Warren Stevens says his company will not divest their holdings in Huntington.
You know, the animals are treated as humanely as they possibly can be.
My mission was to go to the South and let them know you're going to have to deal with some consequences for your dealings with HLS.
Hundreds of protesters are reportedly coming to town to call attention to Stevens' investments in a research company they say commits horrific acts to animals.
Welcome to beautiful Little Rock.
We were driving around looking at potential protest targets. We drove to a gas station. I went in to buy some like orange juice or something, and the woman was freaking out. She said, "We're under attack, we're under attack." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "They're dropping planes on us." And I was like, "What?"
After the September 11th attacks, it was, a different environment, to put it mildly. And there was a lot of discussion of whether the protests should continue.
Little Rock was October 29th, 2001. It was just a month and a half away.
There was this Bush administration campaign of, you're with us or against us.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Everyone's got to unite behind this cause. The cause was shut the fuck up and consume.
It became apparent after about a week when George Bush encouraged everybody to go shopping and football had to be played that protests had to be held. We were going to do our part too.
It became very clear that there was going to be some really big changes. There was also a sense that hopefully law enforcement's focus was on something else besides political activists. But obviously, it was the opposite.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there.
This guy here, he seems to be controlling an awful lot of what they're doing.
Well, people that have been at all this crap that we've been collecting their license plate numbers, they got them from damn near every state in the union here.
We felt it was important to send a message to Lawrence Stevens personally that we're going to come directly to your goddamn doorstep.
Hey, Warren, what do you say?
I understand why home demonstrations and personal targeting is so controversial. But when you take a billionaire like Warren Stevens, he's got this tremendous amount of comfort, billions of dollars. And on the other hand, there's this group of activists, and all they're doing is passing out leaflets and holding signs. Money wins. Money wins that situation. But if you suddenly start making it clear that he has to deal with you, because every time he plays golf, there you are. When he goes out shopping, there you are. And when he comes home, there you are.
There is concern that the anger activists feel towards Stevens Incorporated could turn violent.
As the members, the leaders of this gang tried to they're trying to show their threats that they're going to do today.
This was a legal demonstration. We had gotten permits. When we showed up, they'd surrounded the entire area with this little cage, and we were all supposed to stand inside of this cage and protest.
The police had set up this free speech zone, which makes you wonder, if this is like the free speech zone, then what's everything outside of the free speech zone? Like, the whole country is supposed to be a free speech zone. You could come in one at a time, and they insisted on searching everybody.
These cops won't even let me have deodorant.
They were turning people away for things like having spikes on their jackets.
And the police were just taking their sweet time. So we had hundreds of people waiting to get in.
Pretty quickly, we understood that this was a tactic to basically make this protest impotent. Somebody came to me and they were like, this is unacceptable. People started marching out.
We have a right under the United States Constitution, First Amendment, and under the Arkansas Constitution, 5th Article, to peacefully assemble.
I remember actually saying, I think this is a bad plan. But I headed out. We started marching around the Stevens building and eventually came back and converged there. There's a group of maybe about 4 or 5 kids that started shaking a barricade.
During the police riot, I heard a cop say, Kit Harper, which is my name. I got pepper sprayed, and then I got shot in the face with a rubber bullet.
After the protest, the cops were following me. I was tackled and dragged into a parking lot where they punched me in the head, knocked my glasses off, put me in a chokehold until I couldn't breathe, handcuffed me, and then carried me down to a bus where I was charged with $11 million in damages.
represent Mr. Harper, plead not guilty.
Some of the people who were arrested had never been arrested before. In some cases, this was the first demonstration that they had ever attended. Many of them were standing legally on the sidewalk when the cops rushed in and just started snatching people at random.
A policeman comes from behind me and he says, "Get out of here." And another cop grabs me from behind and puts the cuffs on me and tells me I'm under arrest. And I said, "Well, you know, that policeman just told me to get out of here and I'm trying to follow his instructions." Didn't matter.
And there's something very radicalizing about that.
Honestly, I think the Little Rock police are the ones that put us on the suspected terrorist list. Just for standing on the street, they put us on this list.
They started going back to their communities and they were outraged and they were angry and they were raring to go.
Stevens Inc. from day one said they were not going to bow to pressure, but a few things were happening. One was that the Shack campaign, the lawful above-ground protest campaign, continued.
Police say they were well prepared, but that preparation came at a cost of more than $200,000.
The cops were going to Warren Stevens and saying, "Your company makes billions and now half of our budget is gone because of one protest."
At the same time, the underground covert elements continued their illegal activity as well.
They found out Warren Stevens' personal credit card charged $100,000 on it, buying him cappuccino makers and washing machines. They also found out where his $8 million penthouse apartment was. They threw red paint over it and smashed the front window. There was an uncontrollable element to this movement that was even beyond Shack, that was taking things to a level that made it way too uncomfortable to stay connected to Huntington.
This combination of relentless above-ground organizing and relentless underground or illegal activity as well all helped to force the hand of Stevens Inc.
Stevens sold its stock in the medical testing lab, a decision Stevens officials say had nothing to do with this protest.
It was a business decision that's good for everybody. Huntington, us, and the new entity that's going to be the majority owner.
I felt and I feel wonderful about beating Stevens. All of the money and all of the resources they had, and to be able to stare them down and say, "We won this time. We won."
It was satisfying on like a personal level because we got mano a mano with this billionaire brat who thought he could stand up to us, and we won. It wasn't satisfying in that, oh, finally this place is done and we can move on. It didn't pan out that way. Somebody bought the damn shares. We set up a little house and operated out of there. The whole top floor was an office.
When I moved to work in the Shack office, I was only supposed to go for 3 months, and then I never came back. We weren't paid. We were all broke. I think we just had a roll of carpet on the floor that everyone sat on. We were able to raise enough money through donations to pay for the rent.
I couldn't believe that they had sacrificed and had given up absolutely everything. They just have no food in the house that they're living in. They drink fasting tea. You wake up and your stomach is growling and you're hungry, and you drink fasting tea.
We worked, 7 days a week, sometimes 15, 18 hours a day. This is how I'd go about working on some of the projects. We'd come up with something very generic, and then I'd maybe sketch out a few ideas and then put it into action.
We put an advertisement in for a brick. A smashing idea in the war on vivisection.
After a while, we just kind of got a reputation for being smartasses.
Learn to recognize gang members. That's good, huh? Shack as a campaign coordinated national campaign targets in the dissemination of information. But it was left up to the local groups as to how they wanted to use that information.
The website was the cornerstone of the campaign. Everything that happened in the campaign went up on that website. It was mobilization, energy, and excitement.
Up-to-date, minute-by-minute reports of what your communities across the world were doing.
And this was before Facebook. It was a complete turning point in social movement organizing.
Anytime we read an update, we really felt like a part of the bigger campaigns.
Fudge. All right, story of my life. Always a little bit out of gas. We're punk kids. We don't have money to be throwing around to change the world. I don't keep a gas can in my car because I dread that one day that the cops pull me over and then say I'm in possession of bomb-making instruments or some bullshit. So instead, we just see the ebb and flow of where the money is. Yeah, 40 cents a gas. And through our direct actions, we're going to try to become part of this process.
You haven't been part of the corporate world and you don't know how they work, but you can figure all that stuff out. Then you understand not only its strengths, but you understand its weaknesses. And then you can start picking these places apart.
Something like Huntington Life Sciences needs to be targeted financially because they speak in a language of money.
One of us just called up someone at the SEC and pretended they were a college student and was like, hey, can you answer some questions about how financials work for a corporation? And this person was really excited to tell them. I think we carried on a relationship with that person for almost 2 years of just being like, hey, it's so-and-so, like doing my paper still, like, could you answer this question for me? What's a market maker?
This stuff is really complicated. They had to learn about the pink sheets and market makers. And that's not this type of campaigning that a lot of people are willing to do. It's not glamorous. It's not fun. This movement embraced those tactics because they realized it had the potential for change.
There was hundreds of companies that were severing themselves from this laboratory because they didn't want to put up with activist pressure.
So because I work for a company?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
My house,
exactly.
interrupting my family?
Yeah.
They just sent me 3,000 emails today, and now they're at my door. What the fuck?
We'd kind of look at what other cities were active and say, oh, we're going to do a better demonstration than them. We're going to have more people.
Keep any business from having anything to do with Huntington Life Sciences.
There are no lab coats because the linen service is no longer functioning. Trash is piling up because the waste removal company is not working with you.
Huntington's janitors quit. Their cafeteria supplier quit.
Internet companies, auditors.
The idea was we will stick with this until we win.
Phone blockade, email blockade, denial of service attacks. No one would participate on their board anymore.
We love animals too. We would never hurt an animal. Never.
We started this protest campaign against a guy in Pakistan. We called up and said, I don't want to deal with you people anymore. I'm quitting.
The largest accounting firm in the world just backed up within 24 hours.
After looking at the Shack website, they do not want to be part of this.
The world's biggest financial corporations, Citibank, Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, realized one thing, that it wasn't worth it.
Their share price dropped from like $30 to a few pennies.
Try suing us! That doesn't work! Try the FBI! Try police beatings! We don't fucking care! We're never going away, and we always win!
You really felt unstoppable at that point.
This week, activists vomited on an HLS display table at a pharmacological conference in San Francisco on Monday and then turned over tables yesterday.
We're going to be a royal pain in the ass and a rude embarrassment to any company that is connected to Huntington.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the federal agents and informants who made it out tonight. It's always special to see you.
You know, I don't know if there would have been a campaign without hubris. You have to have a degree of arrogance to think you can take on multinational corporations and win. But then I think underestimating the connections of those individuals and how far that they were willing to go to push back.
What we're doing nationwide is we're working very closely with our 66 Joint Terrorism Task Forces.
They started out small by watching us.
There was this sedan with these two guys that were clearly, agents. You knock on the window and be like, yeah, I'm gonna leave now. I'm gonna go to the store, I'm gonna go to the video store, maybe get a movie or something. You guys ready? You ready? Like, yeah.
We're going back to incidents that may have been Shack perpetrated. We're looking at them again as to what we could potentially charge people with. We're going to take every tool we have in our toolbox and use it.
Since that failed, they started searching our trashes.
Here's these two well-dressed men rifling through my garbage. So we started coming out here all the time with all the cat litter boxes and dumping it all over our garbage. Anybody who has studied resistance movements in this country understands that the FBI has always been an enemy to people who are attempting to create change.
And then here it bears out how I also feel about the FBI, that I hate them. I think they're perverse, pathetic bullies.
We're going to be as creative as we possibly can to charge them with a violation.
People are back here demonstrating in front of Rob Harper's house. They're
got picketers, they got bullhorns. They're here to harass these people, and we have an injunction against them.
12 foot squares, 12 feet to the curb. Stand off the curb.
How do you like us 13 feet away right now?
The law has been something where I've said this is what I was made to do. Some people are good at sports. I'm good at the law, including following it, I might point out. You know, some would disagree. Can you show me the law that says that? Can you show me the law that says that?
I don't care about my life.
I know, but you're telling us to stop because there's a law.
No, I'm telling you, you can do your demonstration.
Right.
But the loud noise, there's other residents who live here.
Right, I know that, but what law says
You're also disturbing them. That's disturbing the people.
I'm not here to be considered, but I'm here to follow the law.
What was that?
Protests at individuals' homes is certainly controversial, but it's also constitutionally protected. Sometimes there are local ordinances or some kind of injunction that comes into play attempting to rewrite that First Amendment protection.
You can't do demonstrations unless it's between 4 and 6, and you can't have a bullhorn, and there can only be 10 people, and you have to give 72 hours notice. Well, fine. We'd follow those instructions to a T, but we wouldn't stop going.
Your neighbors don't like us here. We're not going away until your company severs ties with Huntington Life Sciences.
I received an indictment in the mail charging me with, I believe, threats, extortion, and conspiracy to commit both, and I was facing 28 years in prison. I read the complaint, and I got very nervous. I thought to myself, everything they've said in here is true.
They're chanting, burn this house to the ground. That's unacceptable. That's just not what we do in this country to get things done.
There were attempts by Marsh using that example, raising the specter that they might actually burn this house to the ground.
The Shaq matches, one of those things we probably should have thought through a little more before actually doing. A little like ALF guy in the cover, and it says Smash HLS. And the back says Strike a Match. And on the inside, Huntington Life Sciences address.
Not that we're inciting anything, but just in case people need them.
They knew the ins and outs of civil rights campaigning and decisions like NAACP versus Clayborne Hardware, the scope to which you're able to engage in not just controversial speech, but really bold, ambitious speech that in a lot of other countries would be over the line. But the First Amendment case law in the United States has defended all of it.
The First Amendment protects advocacy, including advocacy of illegal actions, unless it meets the incitement test.
It's not enough to have outrageous speech. That speech has to result in what's called imminent and lawless action.
Remember, get him alive if you can, but get him!
It has to set fire to reason.
We will tolerate a wide range of impassioned, even threatening speech, as long as it doesn't target a specific individual for imminent harm.
Imminence is the key, and it really is interpreted to mean immediate. I don't think that that chant was my most flattering moment, but I think it's pretty clear I wasn't inciting a mob. We weren't carrying torches. There were police and private investigators there who seemed unconcerned. I didn't really want the man's house to burn down. My attorney argued that the speech was protected, and the court agreed and dismissed the case. That was a really powerful thing for the campaign to understand what it was about the law that protected what we were doing.
You know what people care about? People care about winning. They care about victory, and that's the most beautiful thing about the Huntington Life Sciences campaign. We're not here to tell you how to behave. What we're here to convince you to do is to take the personal initiative to shut this fucking lab down.
Hey, Marsh, what do you say? 500 animals died today! Tell your employer to stop insuring HLS!
Temporary restraining order enjoins Shaq from trespassing on Marsh property and harassing Marsh employees at their homes. As supporters, you are named in this temporary restraining order. Thank you.
When a corporation thought that with all their money and political clout, they could silence us, the more recalcitrant and stubborn we became.
Tell your employer this is what happens when you insure animal cruelty at Huntington Life Sciences!
Fuck up, man.
If you touch him, there's a camera.
I don't give a shit. This is my house.
You can ask us to leave, but if you touch us, we'll have you
Where's
arrested.
Martha? Go ahead and call the campaign, Martha! Hey, that's assault there, sir.
We encourage anybody, no matter where you come from, to get involved. You can do whatever you feel comfortable doing, whether that be writing a letter, making a phone call, going on a demonstration, throwing a brick through the window, or breaking into Huntington and getting all those animals out. Whatever you do, we will support.
An act of domestic terrorism. That's what police are calling two attacks in downtown Seattle. A military-style smoke grenade flooded offices.
Within hours, suspicion focused on an animal rights organization known as Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty. Shack praised the attacks targeting Marsh Limited.
Oh my fucking God, I'm the public face of this campaign in this city, and this is something I do not want to be blamed for, and I'm not even sure if I want to be seen as supporting it.
Our organization does not take responsibility, does not elicit, and does not participate in the underground illegal direct action campaigns. We support it enthusiastically, but that is not us.
I was thinking about the thousands of people in those buildings who don't know what's going on, who are panicked. I didn't know that it was going to do a whole hell of a lot to help animals inside of Huntington Life Sciences.
On occasion, there were things that people went out and did we disagreed with tactically or ethically. And ultimately, we decided that this webpage, this campaign, this movement belonged to all of us. And we could all participate in the way that we wanted, and you could do that without being censored.
The defendants had a policy with the organization that every communique and message they received anonymously that was related to the campaign, any tactic, they would post on the website.
We get a protest report, cut and paste, put it on the website.
I mean, we've got thousands and thousands of reports over the years, and it was difficult a number of times. We would spend sometimes days going for walks in the woods and having these really tough discussions about we want this to be open to everyone. We want people to try new things. We want people to succeed and fail. And we want people to feel empowered to do what they think is best. But at the same time, what are we promoting and what are we putting on our webpage?
Some of the things that I really despise about the campaign, I want to make it clear that I love the people who undertook these actions. I can see how that would be totally despicable to somebody watching this. How could I love somebody in Dallas who went to the wrong home and smashed up the home of somebody who had nothing to do with Huntington Life Sciences? Some of these heinous things that occurred were committed by people with the best of intentions. Does that mean that I forgive them responsibility? No. But it does mean that I appreciate that they were taking those risks and that they so sincerely wanted to create change. People need to develop the skills to resist these multinational corporations. People have to take risks, and they have to learn by trial and error.
Social change always happens through a wide variety of forces. It's always pluralistic. And people want to revise history. They want to say, well, Gandhi won the Indian independence movement. Well, I'm sorry, Gandhi didn't win it alone. There were forces that were violently attacking the British, and that helped pressure the British to leave India. Dr. Martin Luther King did not win the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by himself. Standing behind him was Malcolm X. It wasn't hippies that stopped the Vietnam War. It was the Vietnamese peasantry that kicked the American Army's ass. Violence and sabotage and property destruction and threats of violence and coercive change of various kinds is what moves history.
We have this really rosy picture of our history. You know, when we talk about women's suffrage, we don't talk about arson. We don't talk about random property destruction.
America was founded on agitation, throwing crates of tea into the Boston Harbor because they were going to protest the tea tax. That was economic sabotage. That was direct action. That's not terrorism, that's American.
Hey, Jen, you want to hear some more good news?
Yes.
Guess who's not with HLS anymore?
Who?
Marsh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You're
You're fucking serious.
Yep, today.
Holy shit. Largest insurance company in the world.
Oh, shit.
The moment Marsh pulled, that was a big victory because everyone thought there's a chance that HLS might not open the next day.
Marsh pulled out, cut ties with Huntington Life Sciences. It was another major victory in the campaign, but it was one that was fairly short-lived.
The UK government was stepping in to provide Huntington with insurance services so they could continue their operations, and stealing a victory we'd earned.
The legal efforts that Marsh had undertaken through the restraining orders and the injunctions and the public relations campaign, that army and that mentality continued, and it was really rolled into the criminal investigation of Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty. The scope of this investigation included more than 100 FBI agents. There were more wiretaps used against people associated with this movement than any other counterterrorism investigation in U.S. history.
Marsh it out, baby.
Did you guys know this when I was at the house yesterday afternoon?
Andy, you have a big mouth. You're not the person we want to tell when we're trying to keep something quiet.
Hey, guess what we got? What'd you get? A fatty beagle dog. Oh, dude. Oh, and he slept in my bed the last 2 nights with me. Oh, we cuddled up. Oh.
Hello, is Derry home? I don't think I'm here. Let me see when I'm going to be back. Can you tell him I'm trying to rock the mic like an old batch of collard greens?
I just wanted to call to make sure you guys had heard that my boss is meeting with the FBI tomorrow. I read that. That's kind of fucked. Oh, yeah.
Interceptions to date have not revealed the existence and location of planning and preparation for illegal activities. Clearly, we're planning illegal activities, and it's just a matter of time before they hear us doing it.
Either they're really, really terrible at their jobs, or we weren't doing what they thought we were doing.
We are currently seeing a significant amount of direct action activity that we are unable to effectively address given the federal statutes we have to work with.
There is a need for tighter legislation to curb this criminal activity that up to date has been impervious to law enforcement authorities.
We are committed to working with our partners to disrupt and dismantle these movements, to protect our fellow citizens, and to bring to justice those who commit crime and terrorism in the name of animal rights.
The single most powerful word in our language right now is terrorism.
This level of violence and propensity for harm has led the FBI to include Shaq as the most serious domestic terrorist threat today.
There was a congressional hearing attempting to label activists as eco-terrorists, to call for new legislation, and to expand the concept of terrorism.
It was clearly the Senate Judiciary Committee meeting to decide what they could do to stop us.
The department supports amending Title 18 United States Code Section 43 to include, among other things, economic disruption to animal enterprises.
Members of Congress on the Democratic side said, hey, we got to have a witness, one opposition witness.
Our final witness today is Mr. William Potter. Mr. Potter is a reporter.
This was all political theater. I was told by Democrats on the committee that it's okay if you raise some minor objections. Just keep in mind that all the Democrats on the committee support the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act.
The bill criminalizes any activity against an animal enterprise or any company tangential to an animal enterprise that causes economic damage, defined as including the loss of profits. That's not terrorism. That's effective activism.
The point of this activity, very successfully executed in recent cases, I might add, is to force business owners to sever ties with a principal target, an act that disrupts business and one that can inflict serious economic damage.
They have pinpointed boycotts and traditional forms of protest and criminalized it so that any threat to cause a loss of profit to a corporation is now considered an act of terrorism.
Pharmaceutical, agriculture, animal entertainment, pet food industries. These are all the industries that were rallying behind the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act behind the scenes.
Last month, HLS was to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The exchange refused to go through the scheduled listing because of threats from Shaq.
When you let a bunch of grassroots, obnoxious kids running around in bandanas and masks determining who gets to trade and not trade on the New York Stock Exchange, That makes people really, really nervous. The government really nervous, corporations really nervous, and they wanted something done.
The Senate passed the legislation in the middle of the night. It was by unanimous consent, which means we have no idea who actually voted for or against the piece of legislation. On the House side, it was passed by an obscure procedure called suspension of the rules. They decided to use this procedure to pass the terrorism law because they could usher it through quickly. There were only 4 or 5 lawmakers in the room at the time.
The fear in the industry that if Huntington fell, any company could be next. That was a legitimate fear for them.
If we don't stop this social movement, who's going to be next?
What will happen when the activists move to the timber industry or the defense industry?
If this continues, the animal extremists will have won, and the loser will be humanity.
That is the precise strategy of these corporations and industry groups to redirect the nature of the conversation.
Even coming to this interview on the phone, I talked to her, now my ex-wife. She said, don't go for an interview because these people are gonna come and get revenge from you. About 40, 50 pretty scruffy people and come to your yard chanting murderers and those kind of stuff, and then throw paint balloons at the house or at the garage and so on and so forth. I wasn't home, but surely my wife was extremely intimidated. That's when you think, oh, is it worth it to work here?
I never imagined that people would actually be fearful for their lives. And I think that why they might have felt that way is because of what the government was whispering in their ears or what corporations were telling them.
Princeton police had undercover agents sitting in their unmarked cars.
There were actually people that were knocking on the doors, telling people what to expect when the animal rights people come.
They just said, be careful, don't walk into your yards at night. Huntington put a security system in my house for about $5,000.
The Department of Justice had a handout that they gave to companies targeted by SHAC. It suggested that we were capable of anything, even shooting people.
We all had push button at our necks. If something happens, we would have pushed it. It was like calling 911 immediately. And it would know your locality as to where you are. Yeah, we were kind of scared for our own livelihood at that time. Had car windows broken, that is not true. Tires slashed, that is true. Houses spray painted, that is correct. His wife is reportedly on the brink of a nervous breakdown and divorce. Correct. Correct. And if this is not terrorism, I don't know what is.
Stuff I read about the group that you say your name is frightens me.
Well, it's unapologetic. 500 animals die every single day there, and we feel that that's outrageous. And if no one else is going to do it, then we are, and we're not going to apologize for our tactics or others' tactics. We're going to get the job done. Simple as that. And if it scares some people, then so be it. Some of these people should be scared.
Well, it scares me.
They've been terrorizing and mutilating animals for years.
Can I just ask you one question?
Going unchecked. It's about time that someone puts them in check, yeah.
Are you a terrorist?
Are you serious?
Let's get right to it. The FBI says we've got to go after a domestic terrorist. They say he's crossed the line from being a protester to being a terrorist. Surveillance cameras caught a shadowy figure approaching Chiron's headquarters. Cops say he was delivering 2 bombs. Luckily, no one was injured in the blast.
A few days later, a communique came out written by an organization called the Revolutionary Cells, taking credit for the explosion at Chiron and accrediting it to Chiron's involvement in Huntington Life Sciences.
People breaking windows wasn't something new, but people placing bombs under windows was something that I don't think any of us would have expected at the time.
These people, even though they had the love for animals, but they were prepared to commit acts of violence to humans for their love.
No, property destruction is not violence. It's sabotage.
I think it's enormously important to make a distinction between damage to property and damage to people and animals.
Breaking windows, slashing tires, these are all acts of violence.
The harm is just not the same. It's just not the same kind of harm to break a window as it is to break an arm.
This was a bombing. Someone could have died, someone could have been hurt. Law enforcement was using those talking points to elevate the nature of the perceived threat.
Today we're announcing the addition of Daniel Andreas San Diego to the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. San Diego is involved with the Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty campaign.
Daniel Andreas San Diego was the first domestic terrorist to appear on this list of FBI's most wanted, alongside Osama bin Laden and others. These are serious crimes, but to put them on par with the most deadly terrorist attack in US history, I think would be shocking to a lot of people.
So this is the building where I was living when I got arrested by Homeland Security. At 6 a.m. the phone rang, and it was my friend Aaron on the line. He said, "Hey, don't panic." But there have been a couple arrests around the country this morning.
Woke up to hear my mother yelling, and I couldn't figure out what was going on.
A few minutes later, there was a pounding at my door.
I assumed it was the police from the get-go with someone knocking like that. 20, 30 guys come through the door with guns and helicopter, and this is the hallway where they all came in.
The thing that I remember most distinctly is an FBI agent holding a gun in my face, a big gun.
I had to hold Buddy's collar with one hand and open the door with the other, and they're screaming at me to put my hands up and to shut that damn dog up, or they would shoot him.
They have like one FBI guy, one ATF guy, one US Marshal.
Vests, face masks, they had a battering ram.
It was sort of impressive, but it was also kind of like shocking that really, like, that's how important you think that we are?
We have a warrant for your arrest. On what charge? Animal enterprise terrorism.
The FBI busts a militant animal rights organization.
Again, it's all contained here in this federal indictment. Today, U.S. attorneys called it a campaign of terrorism.
And their business, quite frankly, is thuggery and intimidation. They advocate physical assaults. They advocate smashing windows of people's homes, specifically when they are at home.
Chris Christie was relatively unknown. He was trying to make this bid for power. This is still just a couple years after September 11th. If you want to get ahead, you need to show that you're cracking down on terrorism.
I'm in the process right now of hiring 8 new assistant United States attorneys who will work on terrorism. The Justice Department gave us one of the largest allocations of new terrorism assistant United States attorneys to be able to work just on terrorism.
After that big show of force, all those agents, all those guns, all that energy, all those resources, and by noon we were home.
The judge could pretty clearly see that I wasn't a danger to the community or anything, but these people had just heard the word terrorism shouted over and over, and they're retreating into their apartments, and I could feel, like, the fear.
What are we being arrested on? Like, you know, this fear that we were gonna get the indictment and read it and be like, oh shit. But instead I read the indictment and I was relieved. I was like, this is their case, really? Their case is you posted this on the internet, which we knew.
We started learning that our search warrant for our home, the wire intercepts for our telephone, were signed by a judge in Minnesota. Why was a judge in Minnesota and agents in Minnesota in charge of running this case?
If I had to attribute why that chat case became so important, I think it's the nexus that was made to the break-in and animal release at the U.
Operation Trail Mix is a plan to break the animal rights movement, and they went about it any way they could.
Operation Trail Mix, which was the code name of what ultimately became the Shack investigation, all has roots in trying to go after the more covert, illegal elements of the animal rights movement. After failing to actually catch the people that are responsible for some of those crimes, the FBI had changed its focus, again with the influence of corporations and corporate lobbying, and started focusing on the above-ground elements of the Shack campaign.
The FBI established a plan targeting the above ground in order to eliminate both the above and underground.
If you get Kevin Jonas's head up on a pike, Everyone knows what that means. They know who that is.
These are the same assholes who raided my apartment because I had the temerity to speak out in support of people that would break the law to help animals. It's the same people. It never stopped.
Because they're not concerned with rights. They're concerned with the bottom line.
As an author and a storyteller, I had to be in awe of the skill of the prosecution in weaving this narrative in front of the courtroom.
Yeah, I can already tell this is going to make me angry. All right.
The court says, counsel, we're ready for opening statements. Mr. McKenna?
If it please the court, Your Honor, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on a summer day in suburban Dallas. Sorry.
On a summer day in suburban Dallas, Texas, Sally Dillenbach, an employee with Marsh Incorporated, was home with her young son.
The doorbell rang and Miss Dillenbach walked through the house from the back all the way to the front of the house to answer the door.
When she got to the door, she saw her young son cowering behind the door with a kitchen knife. He was cowering behind the door that day, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, because he thought that the animal people were coming to get him.
Because you see, the animal people had been at his house before.
They had plastered his house with pictures of mutilated puppies, and they had been found on his property at night. And they held rallies outside his house where they shouted through bullhorns that his mother was a puppy killer.
So when the doorbell rang that day, the little boy was scared.
And when his mother saw her son that way, she was scared too.
And that fear, ladies and gentlemen, is why we are here today. The animal people were coming.
I can't read this out loud. I can't. It disgusts me.
Why?
Because it's all smoke and mirrors.
I didn't know of the story, but once he told the story, I was like, this is pretty terrible. And I can only imagine that the jury thinks it's terrible too.
Obviously, I don't want a child to be scared. I don't want a child to be at a point where he's cowering behind a door with a knife. Neither myself or any of my co-defendants had ever protested at Sally Dillenbach's house. This was the first of a long line of examples of us being put on trial for other people's actions, actions which we had no foreknowledge of and no part in the planning of.
A lot of these new activist movements are totally decentralized. There is no leader to go after. That structure is something that doesn't make any sense in the government. They can't really step inside someone's head and understand that some of these issues tear them up at night and they don't feel good about themselves unless they go and do something.
They just can't accept that idea of people working autonomously. And I think it blows their mind that there's not someone in control or in charge.
Be careful, because while the defendants were at some of the demonstrations, they weren't always at all of them, because it was the defendant's job to control the flow of information that permitted others to go out and do their bidding.
The prosecutor's argument is that our speeches essentially amount to incitement, and that our speeches are part of this conspiracy, perhaps with people we don't know, to get them to do our bidding of illegal activities.
Bad things happen, ladies and gentlemen. Bad things happen. No one disputes that. The question is, why are the people who didn't commit the bad things on trial?
Right out of the gate, the fact that the prosecution put Brian Cass on the stand and we're talking about violence against Huntington Life Sciences in the UK and trying to bring that into a US courtroom was the signal of where everything was going to go.
As the managing director of the lab, somebody in England had beat him up on his doorstep.
3 people assaulted him and he was hit in the head with a stick. His experience happened on another continent at a time that the supposed United States conspiracy hadn't even began. What possible relevance could his testimony have?
He was put on the set to tone the trial to hurt the defendants. I mean, if I was a prosecutor, that's who I would have put on first.
We have a prosecutor who wants to fight dirty, who's not going to run a case based on the legality of the Huntington Life Sciences campaign, but instead is going to just attempt to prejudice the jury against us.
The prosecution strategy was primarily to put people on the stand to read printouts of our website and then say, I was so scared.
They were brilliant in using the witnesses to concoct a story that wasn't true to reality.
I think that there were a lot of people who got up there during that, parade of victims that weren't entirely sincere.
Come on, killer, show yourself! Come on! You fucking killer! Get out of my You are moving out of our neighborhood. That's what. We're the community.
This is not your neighborhood.
This is our fucking neighborhood.
Where do you live?
And they got kind of rowdy. And eventually the cops came and they arrested him for trespassing, which rightfully so. If they were trespassing, they should be arrested for it. But she gets up on stand during the trial and she gets up there all teary-eyed. And these people came and I was at home with my child. He was upstairs taking a nap home from school. And they show the video and there's Mrs. Perna and she's laughing and joking. And then her son, who's home from school, he's like a 19-year-old kid that's home from college. It's the way that they kind of took this and misconstrued it to make it seem like, we're these thugs out there trying to kill little kids, when really it just wasn't the case.
And you have how many children?
3.
What are their names?
I'm not going to provide that information.
Are you instructing her not to answer that question?
I'm not answering that question.
She does not want her children threatened, and if she is reluctant to provide that information, I certainly understand why, and I think the court will agree.
People really honed in on that. No, I'm not saying that's something I'm personally proud of or I would participate in, or at the time I thought was a good idea. But again, it wasn't that the kid was a target of the campaign. Maybe that kind of stuff should be censored, but at the time, everything was just kind of put up automatically.
We know where your kids live, we know their names. That is extreme. I don't think that people are debating whether that's extreme rhetoric or not. Whether it's protected speech, whether that's legal.
We have not had very restful night's sleep. We don't know who might be lurking out somewhere in our yard. It's caused mental anguish with my children who don't sleep well through the night.
We probably didn't realize what the impact of this train of individuals was going to have on the jury.
They saw this conduct that to them was intolerable. Criminal or not, I'm not sure they cared. It was intolerable.
The jury felt the need for someone to be prosecuted for what was happening around the country, and we were the only people the government was providing.
And I'm here with Josh Harper, co-defendant extraordinaire, and is off to the bathroom. Josh spends a lot of time in the bathroom. Here's the support group for the Shack 7, minus the olive oil. I don't know how much money I'm gonna have to spend in therapy in the years to come, or how many AA meetings I'm gonna have to go to, because by the time this case is done, I will be a full-fledged alcoholic.
I understand.
Yeah.
The last 2 days in court have been pretty grueling. The whole Chiron incident was brought up. Shack is basically kind of being charged, I guess you could say, with this.
I feel like I had a part in having this brought up in trial in such a big way.
The main suspect in the Chiron bombing, Daniel Sandiego, is still at large, but the FBI says it was a link between Jonas that assisted in the investigation.
The FBI made a claim that there was a phone call from Kevin to Andreas the day of the Chiron incident.
They took whatever little bits of information they could, such as the phone call registers between the Shack House and a phone number they had connected to Daniel Andreas Sandiego.
We do have evidence that Mr. Sandiego and Mr. Cajonas were in communication with one another.
I made that phone call. I made a call to a half a dozen people in the Bay Area that day asking them to record the news. Somebody said to call Andreas. Andreas answered the phone. I talked to him and I asked him to record the news. That's the content of that phone call.
Here we are, basically 9 days into the case, and the prosecution rests, and now it's the defense turn, so let's hope for a good defense strategy. That's it.
This was a case that the prosecution had been immersed in for years and years, and they knew every detail and how to bend every detail. And meanwhile, our attorneys didn't even know the names of some of the major players. At one point during opening statements, I looked over at my attorney and he's scribbling these notes. And I leaned over and I was like, Jim, you're not writing your opening right now, are you? And he looked at me and he said, it's only an opening.
You have this naive faith in the system of justice. It doesn't exist. It's so stacked against the defense and so in favor of the prosecution. Judge Thompson granted the prosecution's request that we couldn't talk about what happened inside of Huntington. That might prejudice the jury.
For most people, standing outside of someone's home in the middle of the night, yelling and screaming and holding placards, it seems pretty unreasonable. I think if people got that full narrative, they'd understand that what's going on there needs to be challenged, and that it needs to be challenged with force.
The reason that you would fight so hard for a being that has nothing to do with you, a beagle or a cat or a horse or a cow that you have never met, that in some cases you've never seen and never will, you've got to have an awful lot of heart. Myself and my co-defendants were intelligent, caring people who had been so distraught over what they had seen happening inside of Huntington Life Sciences that they had been moved to take action.
The prosecution was able to talk about animal testing, and they used phrases like life-saving research. Huntington Life Sciences is saving children's lives. There's no evidence that's allowed to refute that.
We'll fight this, and we'll make this case just about as much about Huntington and animal cruelty as it is about the First Amendment.
Every step of the way, the judge refused to allow it in the courtroom.
And our case is just about a bunch of unruly kids who, for some reason or another, the jury doesn't know because we can't tell them, are running around neighborhoods with signs and bullhorns and being belligerent. There's no context to anything. You would think this isn't about a political movement at all. It's just a bunch of kids with nothing better to do. Because the jury will never hear why we did it.
Dance. Okay. Fucking dance, bitch.
God, there's like no skin here to touch.
All I can give you.
I know.
The phrase that I always use is that you see the train coming, but it hits you anyway.
Judge asked if they had their verdict.
They just went down the list and it was guilty as charged, guilty as charged, guilty as charged. Every defendant, every count.
Guilty, guilty. How do you find the defendants? Guilty. How do you find the defendant? Guilty, guilty, guilty. Like, holy crap.
I remember my lawyer put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "You can still go to law school." And I wasn't crying over that. I was so stunned. I didn't know what else to do other than cry. I was just floored.
I always get emotionally committed to my clients. Andy, I guess a little more so. It hurt everybody to see these kids be prosecuted.
Both witnesses in this case were that this is the first real trial of its kind here in the country. The president has said.
It was a great example of terrific partnerships in the Joint Terrorism Task Force between the FBI, the state police, and other agencies. These are remorseless defendants committing serious crimes.
In my 7 years as United States Attorney, we were equal opportunity prosecutors. Believe me, I know how to hold people accountable.
Putting these people in jail was not what the case was all about. It was about appeasing the appropriate business interests and making a statement.
It sent a very clear message to the pharmaceutical and biomedical industry of having their back and earning their support.
I enthusiastically declare my candidacy for governor of the state of New Jersey.
The rhetoric from prosecutors during the trial was that this was a campaign of lawlessness, and the reality was very far from that.
There was no direct evidence of any unlawful conduct. So now you're in the area of either inciting unlawful conduct or conspiring to commit unlawful conduct. When you mix that stew up and you have a zealous prosecution, you have created a time bomb as far as the punishment of First Amendment activity is concerned.
This was a prosecution of a political movement simply by using the charge of conspiracy that envelops both criminal and protected activity.
A lot of the speech that ends up being protected takes place in the abstract. People advocate something, nothing happens. The question is, can the First Amendment really do its job when you're engaging in effective advocacy? And I mean effective in a very particular way, which is I am advocating that something should happen, and then someone agrees with me and makes it happen. I mean, can the First Amendment handle that? Your gut response to speech.
Look at all these fucking police that you need to protect you from this campaign!
That gut feeling that, oh God, this is not okay. That's not the measure of First Amendment protection. That's what the First Amendment is protecting against.
The appeal focused on the right of the defendants to say what they said.
On paper, the case was so strong. The government's argumentation was so weak. This might turn around.
In the courtroom during the appeal, it quickly appeared that things were going to be much the same as they were at the trial level. The defense tried to talk about the true nature of the campaign, and the judges would interrupt. This is outlandish talk, but it's just talk, and then the judges would interrupt.
One of the judges of the Third Circuit sort of angrily got up out of his chair. Do you have children, sir? Do you have children? Yes, Your Honor, I do have children. I don't think that's relevant to the issue here.
They already know how they're going to decide.
The opinion itself just reeked of prejudice.
They write, quote, Gazzola was personally involved in a bombing of a Marsh subsidiary in Seattle. First off, the bombing was a smoke bomb, certainly still illegal, but a smoke bomb. Her personal participation that they quote was her calling into a radio station.
Well, we support illegal action, we just don't engage in it.
Well, I think more along the lines of Palestinian terrorists.
I absolutely would not compare broken windows to people who blow themselves up and kill people.
I think the goal is to demoralize everybody else.
We definitely want to demoralize the company.
That's not really the kind of personal involvement in a bombing that is illegal. In fact, it's the kind of personal involvement in a bombing that's protected by the First Amendment.
Mr. Harper, and I'm now quoting, coordinated the Shack campaign in Seattle, gave speeches advocating electronic civil disobedience.
He visited a Deloitte & Touche office, during which it appears he did nothing illegal.
Called Jonas to express his surprise and pleasure with Shack's successes.
He wrote an editorial.
Harper's personal conduct does not cross the line of illegality. To punish him simply on the basis of his political speeches would run afoul of the Constitution.
The analysis should have ended there.
But the Third Circuit then went on to say that that conduct showed that he was part of the conspiracy.
How do you, on the one hand, say outright, that speech is constitutionally protected, and then in the very next sentence say, that speech is enough to get you convicted for terrorism.
To be honest, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life right now. It seems so different than what I was taught. I feel like I've been lied to since elementary school about these rights that we supposedly have.
I'm not taking anything more than 2 sweatshirts and 5 pairs of white underwear. I'm gonna pack them all in under my jeans tomorrow. But aside from that, I'm not taking anything else.
Your name?
My name is Jake Conrad.
And?
That's my whole name.
Tell us what you are accused of.
I don't feel like it.
When you believe the First Amendment protects your speech, you're believing in a rule. But if the law is an instrument of power, it doesn't really matter what the rules say.
I never would have expected this. It's pretty devastating.
Evidence against Derry was he called me to talk about when there was going to be a protest. And he was going to go to jail for that.
Suffice it to say that Jonas's metaphorical fingerprints were all over several of Shaq's illegal activities. Metaphorical fingerprints are... They're metaphorical fingerprints. What does that even mean? What did he do? What did he do? Were there actual fingerprints anywhere? That would be actual evidence of engaging in illegal activity.
What do you think they mean?
I think they mean he was a leader.
We're a new breed of activism! We're not your parents' humane society! We're not friends of animals! We're not Greenpeace! We come with a new philosophy! We hold the radical line! We will not compromise! We will not apologize! And we will not relent!
We should bring that tape thing. I don't know if my mom's car has a tape player though.
Is it just CD?
I believe so. Cars are made with tape players anymore.
Yeah. Do we have any good CDs that we want to take?
I don't remember having any CDs anymore. I really want to make sure Willie gets picked up.
I want to be there. Like, I can be one of your first visits and, like, you know, get there immediately, put money on your books, and...
That's nice.
You
Just
know.
make sure my mom does pick up Willie.
No, I know she does. I mean, she loves Willie, and
Yeah.
there's no question about that, and Willie will definitely be happy with her.
Yeah.
So...
I need to touch the piggy. My little miracle.
Do you want to say anything else? It's kind of all been
This
said at the...
sucks.
It's kind of all been said at this point, huh?
Well, not really under the camera.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this sucks. Live in America and you don't have any rights.
Yeah.
So, I'm done with it. I'm all done. I'm just gonna dedicate myself to Willie now.
He's gonna get a lot of attention then, huh?
Yes, he will. That's it.
When I first began investigating this, I thought the explanation of why this is happening is the same explanation you see so many times in Washington and in any seat of government power, and it's money.
You can point fingers at Huntington and Brian Cass, Charlie McKenna and Chris Christie and all these people. Are they the symptom of a bigger problem? Probably, yeah. If we really want to stop picking away leaves and branches off this tree and dig up the roots of the issues, we're not gonna find Chris Christie down there or, Brian Cass. We're gonna find capitalism and quest for absolute power.
There clearly is a very well-articulated fear that if these beliefs and these values take hold across a broader segment of American society, it'll be a threat to the entire American way of life. of how we view our place in the world as human beings.
Hello, my name's Brian Cass. I'm the CEO of Envigo. Anybody heard of Envigo? Prior to Monday of this week, you would know us as Huntington Life Sciences. I just want to welcome you to tonight's festivities, an evening of gambling and drinking, which I think is a great beginning for our new company.
I'm not sure that the Shaq strategy is a winning strategy, because we didn't win. We didn't win. We didn't close the lab. There was mass mobilization, which I think was spectacular. I'm not sure how useful it was to mobilize around a target that we framed as being somehow extraordinary. Because it's not extraordinary. Huntington is not extraordinary.
There's nothing happening at HLS that isn't happening all around the world in hundreds of different contract research organizations, or for that matter, in thousands of universities. The suffering that people saw in that undercover video, as someone who has worked in that industry, it was not shocking. It is typical. That is a normal day.
This lab and other labs and other institutions of violence against animals will close when that sort of violence becomes unacceptable, becomes something that we, as a society, don't want.
Violence is a very wide thing. Anything that you do to take freedom away, to make people feel bad, mentally, physically, is violence.
Would you consider testing to be violence?
Testing?
Like animal testing?
No. No. It doesn't fall into any of these categories of violence. I think humans are different from animals. We have rights, for instance, to be heard. We have newspapers, we have radios, we have television, we communicate with each other. We are fearful of tomorrow. Animals are never fearful of tomorrow. They're fearful of right now. If you hurt them, they get scared, they get hurt right now. But you can never subjugate an animal. That if you don't do such and such a thing, tomorrow I'm gonna put you in jail. Or I get your brother and I kill him if you don't behave. Animals are not capable of understanding these things. Animals can only feel the hurt right now.
Junior and I have this special bond with each other because he spent the last 4.5 years in an animal testing lab in a cage, and I spent the last 4.5 years in a prison. And now that I'm free, I'm restarting life with a partner who is the embodiment of everything I gave up those last 5 years for. Thank you. Wow. It's good to be back. So let's just address that elephant in the room. Yes, Lauren and I and a few other people ran the Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty campaign. And yep, I got a 6-year prison sentence, of which I did 4 years, 9 months, and 12 days. That chapter, it's mine alone. I survived it with the help of my family, with my friends, with Aaron. These two guys came from a rescue organization called Beagle Freedom Project. They're from research laboratories.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were tested on, both of them, for a couple of years each.
Oh, no.
My Beagle, Junior, came to me as a scared, confused, and fragile little survivor and his body bore the marks. He has scars where incisions were made, notches in his floppy ears that are missing. I watched as that first night he cautiously jumped into our bed, his bed, for the first time. And he decided, bravely enough, that he was going to try again with our species. If Junior wasn't going to be defeated by animal testing, why the hell would I? One of the things I learned about myself from the Shack campaign is I'm highly competitive and very stubborn, and I don't like losing. And so when I start a fight with somebody, an industry, or an issue, I'm in it for the long haul. Beagle Freedom Project existed for 5 years, and we've rescued well over 1,000 animals from laboratories, giving them a second chance at life. Just this week, New Jersey, Assembly member there, introduced our signature piece of legislation, the Beagle Freedom Bill. Already a law in 5 other states that mandates any taxpayer-funded research laboratory must give the dogs and cats up for public adoption when the research is done. The industry hates us because they complain that we're using their dogs in propaganda against them quite effectively. And to that, yeah, we are.
God bless you. You're really doing the Lord's work, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. Just like 15 years ago when I stood before you and I gave you a speech free of fear, without regard to consequences, I do it again tonight because I know what those consequences are. I survived them, and so can you.
Oh, it's here. It's here. It's kind of got a little bit of flood damage on it. You know, someone wrote for the Financial Times of London about the campaign. To have the premier paper for the world's capital markets have a line in it that said that these individuals are succeeding with fighting capitalism where Karl Marx and the Red Brigades failed was kind of a really serious statement to read. And so when I read that, I was like, I feel like I'm part of history, being part of this. These tactics worked then, and they'll work again.
Although I'm most certainly not the same person that I was when I walked into prison, the differences didn't remove from me the most valuable parts of who I am. All of the things that I had gone to prison for fighting for still matter to me, and in many ways seem more urgent to me now than they did then.
None of us do have the magic solution. Revolution is not really a science. I think that revolution is a little bit more like surfing. There's a wave coming at you. You don't really know what it's going to bring or when it's going to stop or how it's going to drop out, but you've got to ride it anyway. Right now, I really do believe there's a new wave coming. People's anger and compassion will only stay suppressed for so long.
It's not just about Earth liberation. It's not just about human liberation. It's not just about animal liberation. It's about collective liberation, the liberation of everyone. Because at the end of the day, like, we all want to be free. And if we start picking and choosing who gets to be free, we're never going to get anywhere.
As frightening as it is to talk about the need for confrontation after I've gone to prison for talking about that need, I can't in good conscience turn my back on what history has told me. And that is that without struggle, there is not progress. And that unless you are willing to rise up and to fight with your hands, nothing changes.